Mike's always interrupted me. Just always. Always got to have the limelight. No. I am so glad that we have the opportunity to partner with him. And if you can, if you have those dates free, even if you don't, it'd be great to reschedule and be a part of that, to invest. When we plant a church, and it is we don't want to just send them out and say, I hope it works well. Let's go be a part of that. And like I said, on flinthills.org, you can sign up. And if you have questions more about that, we'd love to answer those. And specifically, really excited to hear that your brother's coming up and that their church from Georgia, and that you're helping with the VBS there. So you can obviously see Karen for that in terms of getting involved in the Vacation Bible School. Exciting. One of the things that I never do it real well is responding to world and community events in terms of like the following Sunday and kind of putting it in context of the church. And it's not because I don't want to. Maybe I'm just not very flexible, but I really can't avoid this, and it actually fits with exactly what I want to talk about. A week ago, you've seen the news, we had two college athletes that were shot, one fatally wounded and the other recovering well. But it's just one incident, right? And there's been a couple shootings since then. And the shootings, I would say, are really not the problem. There's a problem that creates that problem. And I don't necessarily know what that is. It's hard to put your finger on what's going on. Why are people so filled with that kind of hate? I mean, we could put pretty quick spiritual band-aids on things and just simply say trite statements like they need Jesus. And they do. That's not a trite statement. It's just maybe not well thought in terms of, yes, they need Jesus, but what's going on inside of people? And what are the ramifications of a murder like that? What's going on? And really the question that I would want to invite us into is, what does it mean for us? What does it look like for us to respond to that as a church? Now, the easy thing, none of it's easy, but maybe on the spectrum of easy, is to just go get active and do stuff. A lot of response has been like that in terms of racial reconciliation, in terms of trying to involve the church with those who are dealing with poverty, all kinds of responses, and many of those have been helpful and good. But there's a deeper way to respond, and maybe a deeper problem. And I think that we have a problem in the church that we first have to take care of. And it's not a problem like we're divided. I'm speaking specifically at Covenant. It's not a problem like that. It's not a problem like we're inherently self-serving or anything necessarily like that. But there's a lingering. We live in a culture in the United States of consumerism. That's like if there was one definitive characteristic of the culture of the United States, it would be kind of they both go together, but individualism, that is, it's mostly about me, and then consumerism, that is, it's about what can I consume. It's about what can I take into my life to make my life better, and those being a predominant thought pattern. So here's what I want to do. I want to ask you some questions, and if you want to write them down, like the answers, you don't have to write the questions down, but if you want to write down your answers, that's fine. If you just want to think through them in your brain, do that. But I'm going to go through them slowly enough that you have a chance to respond today, okay? So don't let that be awkward for you. I'm fine with a little thoughtful silence. If you're not going to answer, you're going to be bored right now. So you can answer in your brain. You can write them down. So get a piece of paper or get a pen. You can write on your bulletin, or you can write on the back of your hand if you'd like. Don't write on the back of the hand of the person in front of you. They won't like that, but you can write somewhere. But here's what I want to, and I want you to be honest with yourself. No one's going to take these up. This is for you. Okay? So no one's not doing a survey. It's not going to go up on the screen next week or anything like that. But here's what I want to ask you is, why do you attend Covenant? Why do you? Not church. I didn't ask why you attend church in general, but why do you come to this church? Why do you come to this church? You don't need a paragraph, all right? That will take too long. I don't have that much silence in me. Why do you come to this church? Think that through. Next question. What's your favorite thing about being a part of this church family so far? What's your favorite, whether you've been here once or 10 years, just so far, maybe you could say, what do you like most about what you've experienced at Covenant so far? Think through that. What do you like most about your experience, what you've experienced? And that next question is just the opposite of that one, but I've asked it a little differently. But maybe what frustrates you or disappoints you the most about your experience at Covenant? And I'm asking about your experience. I'm not asking about what we believe or what's frustrating you about your experience in this church family. Everybody's got an answer to that, by the way. Don't worry about that. There's things that frustrate me about my experience here. That's okay. What, if anything, has changed about you or your life in general as a result, and I would say a direct result, you would say this is a result of being a part of Covenant. What, if anything, has changed about your life as a result of being or participating with Covenant? That can be good or bad, positive or negative. Now, the last question is just a thought provoker. It may take more. I want you to answer it at some point, but I want you to begin to think about it now. And how would you describe where you personally are, in terms of relationship with Jesus? Relationship, not belief, as in whether he's there or not, real or not, but maybe the other word is, how are you experiencing? What's your experience like with Jesus right now in terms of relating to him? That's an important question. I would tell you that the answer to that question has a lot to do with the impact that this church, or any church for that matter, would have on the community that it exists in. It's not really about, we can answer and address questions like racial reconciliation or violence or your view on, guns or whatever. We can deal with all that kind of stuff. But you got to know, all that kind of stuff's been dealt with a lot. Even right here in Topeka, Kansas. A lot. And the problem remains. The problem, and the problem is really hard to define, but it's typified. We can kind of see it when someone drives up and shoots two people who are entirely innocent. There's no gang stuff going on in that shooting. There might be on the other part, but the victims are innocent. They're not doing drugs. They're not a part of a gang. They're just two college athletes. One's got a whole world of a career, NFL career ahead of him. They're both well liked, well respected, and one's not here anymore. Oh, what does that have to do with us? So here's our statement. We are a church family learning to do life with God in community for the world. A church family learning, not doing it perfectly, right? We're learning. It is a journey to do this. It's not an event. It's not something you start and say, hey, I got this figured out. We're learning how to do our lives. Now, you got to think of this. It doesn't stay here. You don't just think of it like individualism, but you got to start with you. Just with you, and we're going to put you and myself in a context of community in just a second. But how are you doing life with Jesus? What does that look like? What do we even mean by that? We talked about that in our group leader meeting this morning. And what does that mean? I mean, I like that statement, but I'm a pastor, and I like kind of statements like that. Like, do life with God. Do life. I think what we said, and I think what we mean is it's about a really constant, I won't even use the word constant, but a regular and a growing awareness and an interaction with God throughout a day-to-day process. Whether we're at the grocery store, or we're eating breakfast, or we're cleaning up, or we're mowing the lawn, or we're folding laundry, or whatever. How do you do that kind of stuff with God? And does it matter that I fold laundry in relationship with God? And how do I do that? Does He help fold my underwear, or what do we do? I mean, what are you talking about? That's too much information, wasn't it? Fold your underwear then. That's not too much. Y'all wear underwear, I hope. That's good. I can hear a lot of people saying, just stop now. Just stop. You know what that makes me want to do? It makes me want to keep going. So don't egg me on. We'll talk about underwear for a long time if you'd like. How do you do that? What does it mean? And it's not just being aware that God is there somewhere, that He's present. What we're talking about is learning how to interact and relate with a God who is alive and present and near and desires to interact. My guess is a lot of us struggle there, even if we say we know better, that we struggle with, does God really want to interact with me? I mean, who am I to interact with? And, I'm nobody important, and I'm just this, or I'm just that. Or even worse yet, we can go down the road of, I've done so many bad things, why would God want to even hang out with me and associate with me? And we can do all that stuff. But here's the bottom line, that we have a God who is alive from the dead, and whose love is not something that He does, it's something that He is, and it's perfect. It has no fault or failure or limit to it. So just hold that in mind. So we're here learning to do life with God in community. So you take you and you put you in the context of other people who are learning to know you and you're learning to know them, that you're beginning to connect with each other. You know more than their name. You know more than their favorite sports team or their food. You're beginning to share your life. Not instantaneously. I was always terrified of this. You don't want to be put in a group where you have to go, and I always use the term, just emotionally vomit all over everybody and tell them your deepest, darkest secrets, and no one wants to do that. No one's going to do that. That's not what we're talking about. That in community is a place where you really belong. You have a sense like I belong. I fit. I'm needed. Like I'm valued there for who I am, not just what I can contribute. I have a purpose. I can participate in a mission that's bigger than me. I'm known by other people. They know me, and they like me anyway. At least they accept me anyway. And I know them. I'm beginning to know that community is two-way. If you had to really boil community down, you're known and you know. You are known by others, and you know those people, and it's reciprocal. And the relationship stays intact, okay, when you're known and you know. Okay? So that's community, is where the relationship stays intact. Because there's a lot of relationships that when you really get to know somebody, the relationship's over, right? Or they know you, or, and it breaks. But community is not like that. Community puts its arms around people as they are and as they begin to reveal who they really are. So we're a church family, learning to do our lives with God. We're inviting Him into moments that are ordinary and plain, difficult and challenging, monumental, and maybe even seemingly insignificant. We're learning to invite Him in and respond to Him in those moments. And we do that in a context like this, where not just like this, but where we're learning to know other people and other people are knowing us. We're learning to do that. And then we're doing that for the world. Here's where we really get stuck. Because this is me talking to you, of course, but I'm telling you my experience. It feels really good to learn how to do life with God. I'm loving this. I'm not speaking figuratively. I'm learning how to invite Jesus into stuff that I've never invited Him into. And and I'm learning and experiencing interaction with Jesus. Doesn't that sound crazy? I mean, there's an invisible person I'm talking about inviting into something and responding to and interacting with. But it's happening. And I'm loving that. And I love community. Now, community is not hard for me because my job is basically to shepherd a community of people. So it's hard to shepherd and lead a community of people and not be a part of a community. You're a built-in family that I got when we moved from Texas to here. And it's awesome, and we love you. And so community is not a struggle for me. Sometimes I am a very introverted extrovert or extroverted introvert, however you want to look at that. I'm fine by myself in a tree somewhere. I don't just sit in trees. I hunt out of trees. All right, you're right. I do sit in trees sometimes for no good reason. I can do that too. It's only when people really annoy me and I have to go be by myself. I don't do that anymore. That was when I was a kid. See, I'm letting you know myself. This is me. You're like, well, if we had known that, we wouldn't have hired you 15 years ago. So, I like that stuff, but if it stops there, and it stops there a lot for people, I'm learning about Jesus, I'm getting Jesus, and I love my church family, and this is all good. Don't mess that up by involving the world. Because the world's a terrifying place. It's a place where people drive up and shoot people. Honestly, that happens. It's a place where people hate people over the stupidest stuff. I mean, there's people that don't talk to people for decades just because of somebody got their feelings hurt. I mean, there's people that are so lost and so broken. The world is really a messed up, broken, dark place, but it is at the same time beautiful, stunning. I mean, when's the last time you stopped and talked to one of the incredible babies we got in this room? Like, I'm not talking about a grown-up who's acting like a baby. I'm talking about a baby. And you look at that baby, and they just smile back at you. It's beautiful. I mean, I had this problem in the fall, too, because in 15 years, this was the prettiest fall we've had, was this last fall. I mean, it was amazing. I took like 2,423 pictures of trees. Not that I've counted. But then the spring happens, and there's these red buds everywhere, and I'm constantly stopping and looking at red bud trees. And literally, I thought, somebody's going to call the police on me, because I'm parked in front of their house just kind of looking at their tree. And then you pull out a phone. That looks really suspicious. They come out, and I'm going to say, I'm just taking a picture of your tree. Yeah, sure. You look like that guy that's taking pictures of pretty trees. The world is beautiful and terrifying all at once. I mean, it's just this, it's just confusing, right? But we exist in it. And here's the premise of what I'm coming at. If we can learn, and we're bent on this, like that, if this drove everybody away but 10 people, I would still stay here on this one thing because I'm this convinced that Christianity is about learning to do your life with God, not for Him. It's not about learning the rules and playing by the rules. It's not about cleaning up the outside and remaining the same on the inside. It's not just trying to manage your sin or avoid sin. It's about learning to do your life with God, like journeying through a 24-hour period with Jesus and waking up and doing that again and waking up and doing that again. And it's not laborious. It's absolutely amazing. It's like riveting. It's the most thrilling, mind-bending, exhausting at times things that I've ever done, but it's informing everything. And we do that, and then we get to do that with other people who are doing that. That's the really, really cool thing, is that I am not pastoring a church where I'm just doing it and hoping somebody out there joins me. I mean, I get to go into a group every Sunday morning where people from 80-something years old down to the 30s are learning and talking about this. And it's happening. And then we get to do that for this world. And I want to tell you that when we can do life with God and we do it in community, the world will be impacted. Now, that sounds really simplistic, especially in the context that I've talked about it. But let me do something else. Jesus gave the church, this church, and every church that calls Him Lord, a mission. It's inalterable. We don't get to change our mission. If somebody ever asks you, what's your mission statement? I don't care if you're a church in Alaska or here or wherever, you have one mission as a church, and it is to go make disciples of Jesus. And a disciple is not just a convert who believes that Jesus is or was. A disciple is a learner, a follower, one who is actually, this is the best language for today, I believe, that we can talk about in terms of discipleship, is somebody who has pledged allegiance to Jesus. They're allegiant to Jesus. I always found it strange that we would pledge allegiance to a flag, which we should. I want us to be devoted to our country, but we don't pledge allegiance to Jesus. Allegiance is a deep, deep commitment. It is an all-in. It's a commitment that requires you do life with God. You don't do Sunday mornings and Wednesday evenings. You do life with God. And a disciple is someone who's following Jesus, learning from Jesus, and becoming like Jesus. Following, learning, and becoming. And in there is the whole word obey. We have to learn to obey Him as we follow and learn, and then we become. So, I set all that up to say this. We have a massive challenge because of this one thing, is that the challenge is we exist in a culture of consumerism in the United States. We exist in that culture. We don't get to change that culture immediately. We exist in it. And the culture of consumerism makes getting what Christianity truly is about very, very, very hard when we don't identify it and deal with it. Now, if we identify it and deal with it and own it, that's your job. You have to do this yourself. That's why I asked those questions I asked early on, is to find out, are you a consumer-minded Christian? Now, you got to be willing to sit under that if that's you. You got to let that indict you. You have to be okay saying, this is who I really am, this is how I really am. I can't say, I'm a 20-something-year-old fit guy. I mean, I could look in the mirror and say, no, you're 49 and kind of fat. I mean, I'm out of shape. I can't lie. I can walk around with my head down and say, this is what I want to think of myself as, but that doesn't necessarily reflect reality. And I'm asking you to reflect reality when it comes to your mindfulness, your approach, and your look towards Christianity. What does it mean? We exist, and I know this because of the culture. We are all, if we aren't fighting back against the tendency to be a consumeristic Christian, we are a consumeristic Christian. Because it's like, how do you jump in the water and not get wet? How do you exist in a culture of consumerism and not have that mindset? Here's what I mean by consumerism. It's the fact or the practice of increasing consumption of goods. It's a mindset that a person holds that I exist to consume. This is the mindset of the United States of America, by the way. We're the biggest consumers on planet Earth. I didn't say good, I didn't say bad. I just said we are. We consume. And we have to consume some stuff, right? I mean, you should consume food and water on a daily basis. But when we approach church as consumers, as takers, that changes a lot. It changes a whole lot. So here's another way to describe the consumer aspect of our culture. That is, we are takers more than givers. That our primary mindset can be take more than give. We can approach almost everything with the primary thought of how will it benefit or help me. Okay? Now don't think that this is uncommon. We even use the term, bless your heart if you do this. You probably won't do it after I say this, but you might have done this until now. I am church shopping. There is no better indictment for the mindset of a consumer-minded Christian in the world. We are literally shopping like we go to Walmart and shop for groceries, and you look for the best deal and what benefits you the most and will cost you the least, and we do that to church. What will benefit me the most and cost me the least? The problem with that is antithetical. It's the opposite of what Christianity calls us to. It's the opposite. That's not at all Jesus' message. Not what benefits me most. But listen, we gotta stay here under this a little bit because it's so easy to say, I'm not that way. And I want to wiggle out too, okay? I don't like it either. But when we're grading music, according to our preferences of style or length or anything, or the length of a sermon, or the content of the sermon, or the personality of the people, or the temperature of the room, or the whatever, or the how good the children's ministry is, or the youth ministry, or whatever it is, or how friendly people are. That's the big one, right? We write churches off like that. If 18 people didn't say hi to us, and they're not friendly, I'm not going there because I'm church shopping. And so when we church shop, our mindset really is what benefits me the most and costs me the least. We switched to that culture here about 3 or 4 years ago. Here's the truth. We started changing language, emphasis, focus that did not accommodate what benefits me most and costs the least, and switched it. We didn't tell anybody because it would be a rapid exodus instead of a slow one. We didn't tell anybody that we're switching it to what costs you the most and benefits you the least. That's the upside down, inverted economy of the kingdom of heaven. Don't think I'm wrong, because Jesus said, hey, if you're going to try to save your life, you're going to lose it. But you lose your life, you'll find it. So we'll go back to that. But we switched, right? I mean, we were running, do you all remember when we had 230, 240 people, 2 services and all that? Did you ever wonder why? I mean, for a while there, I just thought, people are really tired of me. I mean, you can't preach somewhere 14 years and people not get tired of you a little bit. You're nice enough to not say that. But that wasn't it. That wasn't it. Somebody just said it, I think. We're tired of you. No. That wasn't it. That's not. It was really, we challenged consumer Christianity. And we were trying to create a culture. It's a slow turn, and it's almost like inflicting pain on yourself as a church. But we switched that and said, listen, we're going to call you to sacrifice. We're going to call you to live your life in an inverted, inside-out way, according to the culture that we live in, and give and serve and bless others instead of scrambling all the time to secure your own good. But the great thing is we're not asking anybody to just suffer and walk around in poverty and with no friendships and no relationships and just expend yourself until you're exhausted, tired, and almost dead. That's not it. Jesus said, remember, and we're going here, Jesus said, if you want to save your life, that is, preserve it and secure your own good, you will lose it. But if you lose your life, and in some of the verses and in certain various, he said this on several occasions, if you lose your life for my sake, you will find it. It's an inside-out, upside-down economy, so to speak. Now, if consumerism isn't intentionally rejected by the church is going to inevitably become little more than a group of consumers bent on marketing their product. Now, I wish that it always meant that we were marketing Jesus, but that's not usually what we end up marketing. We usually market ourselves. We usually market the church. And we assume that that includes Jesus. But the message oftentimes is, hey, here's how our church can benefit you. Right? We have a great children's ministry. We do. We have a great youth ministry. We do. And you should come because here's how the church will benefit you. And we're just play into the mindset of church is about me. So we come and consume. We grade. We evaluate. And our experience is based on, did it benefit me? Instead of, how am I mobilized and enabled and empowered and led and taught to benefit others? So you see, if we have consumeristic churches in a world that's gone mad, which we have, we're not going to impact the culture at all, are we? We're just letting the culture impact us and define us. And therefore, we operate out of the same culture that the world operates out of. And therefore, we have a continued, chaotic, confusing, tragic existence so many times. So, consumer Christianity is compared to discipleship Christianity. Discipleship Christianity is really a term Dallas Willard used a lot. And in consumer Christianity is this approach to Christianity that maintains yourself as the most important part of it. Now you really got to look at that to see if that's true of you. It's dangerous to assume it's not, all right? Don't assume that. Now, Christianity and the church are seen as commodities, like I said, and that to be consumed. So, consumer Christianity also asks how God and the church can benefit or help me in my efforts to secure my own good and accomplish my agenda for my life. It is okay, it is absolutely okay to when you're broken and you're in need and you're looking for something, to hope that your connection with the church, your connection with Jesus brings some peace and comfort and direction. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about primarily, I want this all to be about me. When you're in need, you're in need. That's fine. I get that. And I can't tell you how many times I've come here in need on a Sunday morning. And here's the trick. In need because I'm just not in a good place, mentally, emotionally, sometimes physically. And when I begin to do this inverted thing of serving others, teaching, like I get an advantage because I have to teach and I have to preach. It's what I get paid for. It's my job. But here's the deal. It forces me to do the inversion, to turn it inside out and say, oh, I really want people to make me feel better. So I'm going to try to get people to try to make me feel better. I don't get to do that. I have to go and pour and expend more of myself that I think I don't have. And then by the end of the morning, by noon, I'm feeling entirely better because I expended myself for others. I can tell you this, that if you come to church as a member or somebody who's seeking something and you are just coming at it from that mindset of, oh, I hope they benefit me. I hope this benefits me. You might find some benefit, but ultimately you will find yourself incredibly dissatisfied. But if you can look for a place where you can serve, where you can pour into other people, where you can make life about more than you, you will find it turned around. I'm talking a big picture here because this is why I believe the church can be largely irrelevant in the community that we exist in, and we see this on the news. So we're indicted. We have to own that. Just because it's not in our part of town doesn't mean it's not a part of our town. It's entirely likely that much of what bothers you or has bothered you in the past about church is directly related to that thing or person not benefiting you as you would hope they had benefited you. As I said, I've been here for 14 years, and I've seen a lot of people come and a lot of people go, and I would tell you over 80 to 90% of the people that have left because their expectations were not met. They were disappointed, or they didn't get what they thought they wanted. Sometimes justifiably, sometimes there was a mistake made, and their feelings got hurt, but they didn't reconcile, and so sometimes that happens. But almost always people say, no thank you, because that didn't meet my need. So far too often, church has succumbed. It's given in to the demands of consumerism. It's easier, by the way. It's easier. We know how to do this. It is marketing 101 to do this. And then we give into it, and then we frantically do everything we can to keep everyone happy through the latest, greatest, bigger, better, and more approach to church life. So here it is. If we want to attract a crowd, first, we really don't get that mission, right? Because the mission is to make disciples. But if we want to attract a crowd, then we do everything bigger, better, more, and we ask, what do people need? Not without really factoring in, doing life with Jesus, but they want good youth ministry, they want good children, they want good music, they want good preaching, and one at a time. And we market that. Then you can draw people. You can. Okay, but that compromises the mission that we've been given because we don't always get to do that. We don't very seldom get to do it that way. So, we are invited to approach Jesus. You are invited to approach Jesus. To love and be loved by Him personally. Not metaphorically, but truly. You get to bump up against perfect love and experience a living Jesus love you perfectly all the time. You want to know what that's like? Read 1 Corinthians 13. If you don't know what 1 Corinthians 13 is, then just go to your next wedding and the pastor will probably read 1 Corinthians 13 and tell those poor couples that they should love each other like that, which is an absolute impossibility. We do not have the capability to love perfectly. It's a description. It's not a prescription. It's a description of perfect love. We can become more that way, but when you read 1 Corinthians 13, you need to read that as a description of how you are already loved by Jesus. And it is amazing. And then we can surrender to Him. And when we surrender to Jesus, when we say, hey, my life is yours, I'm trusting you, I'm going to learn how to respond to you and obey you and do life like you teach me to do because you love me perfectly, it's safe, I can do this, I'm going forward. Then when we do that, we begin to change in such a way that is inevitable that the culture changes around us. We become salt and light, the city on a hill that cannot be hidden. Now listen, we can be a city on a hill that cannot be hidden according to the Scripture, but sometimes we should be hidden. Sometimes the city they see is like not what they should see. Mostly that boils down to we're not pointing people to Jesus as much as we're inviting people to a church. And I want to tell you, as much as I love this church and believe that the culture is healthier than I ever dreamed it could be, what's changing my life is Jesus with you, in community with you. But it's Jesus that's transforming my heart. I wouldn't want to do it with anybody else or anywhere else. And I need you for this to happen. And you need each other for it to happen. But the point is to point to Jesus. Jesus said it. He said, whoever finds his life is going to lose it. That sounds strange, doesn't it? I mean, who talks like this when you're trying to gather a crowd? If you find your life, you're just going to lose it. If you try to save your life, you're going to end up dying, he said. But whoever loses his life for my sake, Jesus said, is going to find real life. You will find in that what real life is really about. And he said in Matthew 16:25, he said, whoever would save his life will lose it. I want to save my life, then you're going to lose it. Whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. All he means is when you give it away, you will find out what real life is, because real life is not about securing your own good. It's not about you. It's not just about you. You matter. You're important. Jesus died for you, truly. But he didn't call us to live that way. He called us to live in such a way that says, my thought process is what is good for other people. Now, I cannot stand up here and do this and sound like I've got it all figured out, because I will feel like a monumental hypocrite. In fact, right now, I feel like you have one of those big blinking signs that says hypocrite. But I'm going to abolish that sign because I'm not pretending to be perfect here. So that's my definition of a hypocrite. Someone who pretends to be what they're not. I'm not pretending. I know that I can stink at this at times. But I also know I am bent. I mean, I will do this if I had to do it by myself. I hope I never do. I would do it. That is, live in such a way that if I allow Jesus space in my life, if I will turn to Him, if I will yield to Him, He's going to change the kind of person I am, not just the behaviors I have. And here's what's going to look like. That I'm going to begin to ask. We had this great discussion in my G2 group this morning. But I'm going to begin to ask as I approach people, what's best for them? What's the good in it for them? What's in their best interest? Instead of, I'm going to win this argument, I'm going to get what's good, I'm going to be made more comfortable, this will make me happy, this is da-da-da. That's what I do when I go to Dillon's. And by the way, it's a lot easier now that they have Bluebell ice cream. I'm just telling you. Woo! I did a sociological study on Facebook on that. Like, I can talk about, listen, I'm about to slam you, so don't laugh. I can talk about Jesus and all this stuff. Now, this is true. You get like 15 likes. It's mostly because I don't think you'll look at anything if it doesn't have a picture. But you post a picture of Bluebell ice cream, not only do you get 1 million likes, but like you start a thread along Facebook conversation, argument. I mean, there's people in other states. I'm not kidding. Go look at my Facebook post. There are people that don't know each other debating the merits of Bluebell ice cream. It's great. It's true. I didn't make this up for a sermon illustration. It's true. I don't know where I started with that. Oh. But that blew my mind. I'm telling you, it just blew my mind. I'm like, I can post pictures of my children. They get a lot of likes and da-da-da-da. But Bluebell ice cream is a phenomenon. I'm just saying. So when I go to Dillon's, that's where I was. It makes me happy. They put it on the end cap so it's easier. I don't even have to go down the aisle. It's like, there's Bluebell again. It's kind of like a glow over that place. In fact, that's how I found it. I was walking by it and I heard it. I could hear this melodious heavenly sound. And I turned and I immediately got out my phone and took a picture of it. I'm not kidding. I know where I'm at. Y'all think I'm lost, but I'm not lost. I know where I'm at because I have my notes and I'm good. Hey, here's where I am. When I approach church like that, like I go to Dillon's, what's the best deal? What's the best deal? What do I need here that makes me happy? What's going to cost me the least and give me the most? It's an infectious attitude that we have to evaluate. Listen, I'm not going to beat this drum for, a 3-part series. I'm just asking you to think about it for you. I'm asking you to think about it because it's not an overstatement. There are lives on the line. There are lives on the line because churches are irrelevant right now. Man, I love the fact that we're involved in McClure. I love the fact that you're serving at New Hope Food Pantry. I love the fact that many of you are investing in other ministries that help people. I love that. But we're being called to something even bigger, and I don't even know what it is, and I don't even like to say that because it seems so enormous, but there's a problem the church has to step into. And we got to be a voice there. And I don't know how that works out or what it looks like necessarily, but we have to do a gut check first, and that's all I'm doing this morning, gut check. Are you here as a consumer or a disciple? Do you want to learn to do your life with Jesus in community with other people so that the world will benefit? Or are you here saying, what can I get? What can benefit me the most and cost me the least? There's 2 steps to turning this around or starting it, and this is where we'll finish. I say this, I'm not trying to sound overly simplistic, okay? Trust me. But it sounds simple, but it's not easy. You have to first stop relying on yourself. It's got to come to a screeching halt where you stop saying, I can do this. Because you can't do it. There's no self-improvement here. You're going to be the same kind of person with modifications to your behavior if you don't succumb to Jesus. And I'm going to tell you what, when you try to manage your sin or modify your behavior for very long, do you know what that does? It exhausts you. It's all you're going to do. And it prevents anybody from knowing you. Because you're constantly putting up a front, right? It's a really big job to put up a front, to have a mask, to pretend, to pose, and to hide. So you got to stop relying on yourself. You have to abandon that. You have to just give it up. You have to say, okay. And now that's scary if I stop there because you're like, well, who's going to be in this for me? It's okay to ask that, by the way. We're not asking anybody to be a martyr today right now. How am I going to be okay? You got to start relying on Jesus. You have to start relying on Jesus. Now that word rely matters. I'm not just saying believe and get the right doctrine or theology or read your Bible every morning, have a nice little devotion on Bible Gateway or whatever you use version or whatever and feel good about it and then go forget about him and saying, you got to learn, I have to learn, we have to learn to rely on, depend on Jesus to teach us what? How to live our lives. How to live life. Not just what to believe that's right, but how do I live? How do I respond to tragedy in my community? How do I respond to brokenness in my family? How do I respond to temptations of pride and power? What do I do about this? How do I respond to an election that I have no idea who to trust? How do I respond to my temptation to be greedy or selfish, or to hold on to a grudge and be bitter? Or how do I deal with fear? Do I just try to not be afraid? Or is it possible that I don't have to live with worry? Jesus asked a very important question one day to a man who is blind. I don't mean this silly, but it's almost funny. A blind man comes to Jesus, actually several of them, and Jesus asks them a question. Not, where did you come from? How did you get blind? How long have you been blind? What's your name? None of that. A blind person, okay, they can't, I'm not talking spiritual blindness. They have that too, but we're talking about people who cannot see anything but black. And they come to Jesus, and Jesus asks them this: what do you want me to do for you? Are you kidding me? I mean, I'm sitting there, if I'm watching this unfold, my question would be like, I wouldn't have said this to Jesus, but I would have thought it. What do you think they want you to do for them? Throw them a party? They're blind. They've heard you can heal people. Why are you asking them that? That's kind of cruel, isn't it? Jesus isn't asking them for information. He knows why they're there. But he wants to make dead sure they know why they're there. Can you trust me to deal with what you need? Are you coming to me because I'm a sideshow? Are you coming to me because you've heard some stuff about me? What do you want from me? They need to know that. You need to know that. You need to know that because he's asking you that question. It's a fair question. What do you want me to do for you? Jesus, I'm convinced, is parked next to you asking you that question. What do you want me to do for you? And you say, oh, it's a genie in a bottle. No, it's not. No, it's not. You're about to find out it's not. If you let him ask you that question, you're about to find out it's not, oh, hey, you get your wish. He's asking you to look deep in your soul and say, hey, are you in this? Are you coming to me because you want the biggest benefit to the least cost to you? Are you asking me to make your life easier or significant? Are you asking me to fix your problems or strengthen you? What are you asking me to do for you? You need to know that. Jesus knows. You need to know. Or his response to you is not going to make any sense. So I'm asking you to ask that question as our final thing, is are you willing to trust him enough to answer that question? Are you? We have to. Don't have to. You can walk out of here and say, hey, I'm out now. I wasn't in it for this. I just kind of wanted to come to church and feel better and go home and do what I wanted to do, and that's not apparently what y'all are about. So, all right. I don't have a nice, tidy conclusion to that, but I want you to go home with that question.